On the third wedding anniversary, Cyrus brought home the sister of his deceased brother to take care of me, but I didn't agree. Does your so-called taking care of her mean she has to live in our house? Cyrus said that I was heartless. He left Cora behind despite my opposition. I couldn't bear it. I quarreled with him again and fell into Cora's trap. It wasn't until I and Cora were kidnapped at the same time and Cyrus only saved her that I realized that Cyrus, who once said he only loved me, had already changed his heart. After being reborn, I no longer expected Cyrus's love. When he brought Cora home, I smiled and said, okay. I waited in the restaurant until 10 o'clock. When the waiter reminded me that the restaurant was about to close, I received a message on my mobile phone. It was from Cyrus. Yuri, I'm waiting for you at home. At the moment I saw the message, my fingers suddenly curled up and then kept trembling. My eyes turned red. I was reborn. It was on the night of the third wedding anniversary of Cyrus and me. To celebrate, Cyrus reserved the whole restaurant and decorated it elaborately. I dressed up and went there. However, Cyrus didn't come. His good brother Leo died unexpectedly. On his deathbed, he asked Cyrus to take good care of his sister Cora. Cyrus took it very seriously. He brought Cora home that very night. Even the explanation was exactly the same as in the previous life. Cora has no family left. I can't just leave her alone. How did I respond to Cyrus in my previous life? I opposed and accused him hysterically. Does your so-called taking care of her mean she has to live in our house? We are husband and wife. Why don't you respect my thoughts? In response to me, there were only Cora's aggrieved tears and Cyrus's cold reproach. Yuri, you're so cold-blooded. He let Cora stay at home despite my opposition. Later, because of Cora, Cyrus and I had countless quarrels and misunderstandings. I tried every means to get the Cyrus who loved me back. However, compared with the delicate and pitiful Cora, my complaints and grievances seemed like unreasonable tantrums in Cyrus's eyes. Cora threw away the kitten that I had raised for 2 years, but Cyrus didn't even want to scold her. When I and Cora were kidnapped together, Cyrus didn't hesitate to abandon me and saved her. So in this life, when facing the serious-looking Cyrus and Cora, who was hiding behind him and weeping aggrievedly, I just smiled slightly. Okay. Since you've made the decision, let her stay. Cyrus's pupils constricted, and he looked suspicious. Yuri, do you really agree? I tilted my head and smiled. She's the sister of your good brother. It's right for you to take care of her. I'm your wife, and I believe you know what's proper. So why should I refuse? Cyrus opened his mouth but didn't say anything. I asked the butler to tidy up the guest bedroom on the first floor for Cora. In the previous life, after Cyrus had a big quarrel with me, he deliberately went against me and let Cora live on the second floor. Since my opposition was useless, I would take the initiative this time. Cyrus felt guilty towards me and wouldn't contradict me at this time. That night, I didn't let Cyrus sleep with me. He thought I was throwing a tantrum and said some harsh words. After hearing my cough, he remembered that I had been sitting alone in the cold wind of the open-air restaurant for the whole night. Then he felt guilty and asked the butler to prepare cold medicine for me. He promised again and again that he wouldn't break his appointment with me in the future. I replied listlessly, okay. Cyrus's movements were stiff, but he didn't say anything more. After tucking me in tightly, he quietly went to the adjacent guest bedroom. Finally, it was quiet. I turned over. The next second, I fell asleep with Xiaoguai in my arms. It wasn't because of the cold. It was because before I died in the previous life, I was tied up in a cold factory building for 2 whole days. I didn't dare to sleep or cry. My nerves had been strained for too long, and I couldn't bear it anymore. So I slept especially soundly this time. I didn't wake up until almost noon the next day. Cora was sitting on the sofa in the living room packing her luggage. When she heard me coming downstairs, she just looked up at me. However, she didn't take the initiative to say hello. Instead, she continued to pack her clothes in an orderly manner and asked the butler to make coffee for her. She seemed like the mistress of this house. In the previous life, when facing her provocation, I was like a balloon that would explode at the slightest touch and quarreled with her. During the argument, she deliberately fell to the ground, and it happened that Cyrus, who came back home to get some documents, saw it. He asked me to apologize without asking about the cause and effect. Of course, I refused. As a result, Cyrus ignored me for a whole half a month. Now, facing her rather clumsy little trick, I was no longer angry. I ignored her and walked into the dining room. The butler brought breakfast to me without my asking. It was obvious who the mistress of this house was. Cora's face turned red with anger. She threw her luggage on the ground with a loud noise. The butler frowned. He just took a step towards that side, but I stopped him with a look. Amid Cora's protesting voice, I ate the first warm meal after being reborn contentedly. Xiaoguai stretched itself and walked to my feet, meowing. I picked it up and held it in my arms. Looking at the warm sunlight in the early autumn, I felt really comfortable. Cyrus should have already instructed the butler. So as soon as I finished my breakfast, the butler opened the door and let the staff in. She finally got what she wanted and packed up the things that Cora had placed in the living room and sent them back to her room. Then she asked the staff to display Cyrus's gifts one by one in the living room. Top luxury jewelry, haute couture dresses, limited edition bags, the latest sports cars. There were so many dazzling gifts. They were all the anniversary gifts that Cyrus gave me out of guilt. I didn't feel much in my heart. But Cora was jealous. Sister Yuri, you're so lucky to marry brother Cyrus. You can enjoy a luxurious life without doing anything. I was silent for a moment and corrected her expressionlessly. No, you should envy me for being born into a good family. After all, I lived like this before marrying Cyrus. Cora's eyes instantly turned red. She was the illegitimate daughter of the Chen family. When she was brought back to the Chen family had already gone bankrupt. She didn't enjoy any wealth and prosperity at all, so what she cared about most was her own origin. But brother told me that girls must be independent and have their own careers. I've always remembered brother's words and never dared to slack off. Cora finally couldn't help but show her weak and scheming side. She wanted to irritate me. But I just lifted my eyelids and glanced at her faintly, then nodded. That's good. Then work hard. Seeing that I was unmoved, Cora was so angry. When she got up, she deliberately stepped on Xiaoguai's tail. It was so frightened that it jumped up suddenly and knocked over the gift box that I had just opened. A crisp sound rang out. I lowered my eyes. I saw the broken Rui jade pendant on the floor. Seeing the jade pendant broken, Cora immediately became nervous. I didn't mean to. Halfway through her words, after catching sight of the figure entering the living room, Cora suddenly fell onto the sofa. Oh dear, this scene fell into the eyes of Cyrus, who had just entered the door, as if I had deliberately pushed her down. He immediately ran over to help her up and questioned me harshly. What did you do? Before he finished speaking, when he saw the jade pendant broken into two pieces on the floor, his face suddenly changed. How did this happen? Seeing that he was in a bad mood, Cora began to pretend to be aggrieved and defend herself. It wasn't me. It was Xiaoguai that jumped up and broke it just now. Sister Yuri just misunderstood me. She had a pair of watery eyes. She seemed aggrieved, but in fact, it was all a scheme. Or I'll buy Sister Yuri a jade pendant to compensate her. Brother left me some money, and I should be able to afford it. However, Cora didn't know that this Rui jade pendant wasn't bought. It was carved by Cyrus himself. In the first year of our marriage, Cyrus had a car accident unexpectedly. He stayed in the ICU for a whole week. After all medical means had been used, the experts said that he could only wake up by his own will. I, who never believed in fate, went to the temple alone to pray for a peace talisman for him. The 2,700 steps in the snow almost made my hands and feet lose their senses. Fortunately, Cyrus woke up on the night when he put on the peace talisman. However, I fell seriously ill from then on and got the root cause of being afraid of cold. Cyrus felt extremely distressed. Later, he heard that carving a Rui jade pendant by himself could bring peace. So he found a piece of jade and carved it carefully. But in the previous life, after Cora was scared faint by an exhibitionist at school, Cyrus gave her the jade pendant full of vows to comfort her. Later, he always stood behind Cora to protect her. I, who lost his love and protection, ended up alone and died in the wilderness. Unexpectedly, after being reborn, Cyrus gave me the Rui jade pendant in advance because of guilt. Unfortunately, it broke before I could touch it. It seemed like it was doomed by fate. Cyrus and I could only stand at opposite ends of the balance and couldn't be together. Amid Cora's repeated explanations, Cyrus silently picked up the broken jade pieces. After looking at them in his palm for a while, he asked Cora to go back to her room first. I knew that he didn't intend to pursue this matter. Forget it. Since it's broken, it's broken. I'll carve another one for you. I'll use a piece of jade with better quality, okay? His overly nonchalant tone made me look incredulous. Cyrus, you carved this for me by yourself, and it was Cora who broke it. How can you say something like, since it's broken, it's broken? His eyebrows furrowed slightly, and his tone was helpless. Yuri, she just lost her relatives and has no sense of security. Could you please be understanding? Then who will understand me? My chest heaved violently. My breathing became uncontrollably rapid. Cyrus, you said you carved the jade pendant and gave it to me for my peace. I've been waiting for 2 years. How much longer do you want me to wait? Cora was brought back by you. You believe whatever she says. You feel distressed whenever she gets a little hurt. But she's just the sister of your brother. I'm your wife. Why do you always wrong me and forgive her? What have I done wrong to deserve your treatment like this? Cyrus, the jade pendant is broken, and it can't protect me anymore. Can you? Can I still trust you and rely on you? As my words fell, my eyes were already filled with tears. Endless regret flashed across Cyrus's face. He hugged me tightly and coaxed me in a low voice. Of course you can trust me. I'll always protect you. Yuri, you know how much I love you. In Cyrus's arms, I gradually opened my eyes. My breathing calmed down, and my tears dried. Looking at Cora's venomous and jealous gaze in the distance, I curled my lips slightly. Cyrus used to love me. However, after Cora appeared, that love gradually changed. In the past, I always couldn't figure out why Cyrus changed his heart. Now I don't want to pursue it anymore. A man who has changed his heart, even just a little bit, is like an apple that has rotted inside and will eventually become ugly. I'll discard Cyrus when he loves me the most and feels the most guilty towards me. Everything that Cora has tried so hard to get will be destroyed by me. The scumbag and the mistress don't deserve to be forgiven. Out of guilt, Cyrus has been very nice to me recently. His meticulous care and attention made it seem as if we had returned to the period when we were passionately in love. However, this kind of intimacy would automatically fade away when Cora appeared. At lunchtime, Cora picked up a few grains of rice with her chopsticks, looking hesitant to speak. I pretended not to see it. Cyrus couldn't help but feel distressed. What's the matter? Cora was like a little rabbit. She took a peek at me and then shrank her neck and shook her head vigorously. Nothing. It seemed as if I had bullied her. Cyrus looked unhappy. Just say it if you have something to say. Don't hold back. Only then did Cora put down her chopsticks and looked at Cyrus expectantly. Brother Cyrus, I'm going to participate in a competition next month, so I moved my easel back and practice painting hard every day. But the room on the first floor is too cold. My hands are frozen stiff and I can't always hold the paintbrush. My action of picking up food paused. It turned out that no matter what I did, important things would still happen. Cora's room on the first floor faced north. It was indeed not as warm as the second floor in autumn and winter, but there were only 3 rooms on the second floor. The master bedroom, the study, and my exclusive lounge. I'm afraid of the cold. Cyrus specially reserved that room for me. There were custom-made sofas, a super large screen, Xiaoguai's cat climbing frame, a toy box, and a jewelry display cabinet covering the whole wall in that room. If Cora lived on the second floor, I would have to make room for her. I didn't say anything. Cyrus struggled for a while. I'll ask the butler to add a heater for you. I've tried both heaters and air conditioners. They'll make the room too dry and the paint will dry up. Seeing that Cyrus was still hesitating, Cora lowered her head again. Brother Cyrus, I'd better move back to the dormitory. The art studio in the school is big and has a constant temperature system. I won't trouble you and Sister Yuri anymore. This sentence completely reminded Cyrus of his promise to his deceased brother. He put down his chopsticks, sat up straight, and looked at me. Yuri, please vacate the lounge. After this winter, I'll have someone install underfloor heating in Cora's room and then let her move back. I was a bit dazed. But Cyrus, I'm also afraid of the cold. Cyrus frowned tightly, looking rather impatient. It's just one winter. You can bear it. When you're cold, you can go to the greenhouse on the 3rd floor or bask in the sun on the balcony of the bedroom. Leo said that Cora was bullied at school. I can't let her go back to school. Although I had guessed that he would do this long ago, when it really happened, I still felt sick and uncomfortable. Cyrus already had his heart and eyes full of Cora. He didn't care at all that I would also be cold and get sick. I took a deep breath and tried my best to slow down my voice. Okay, then move. Cora didn't like small animals. In the previous life, not long after she moved into the 2nd floor, she deliberately opened the window and let Xiaoguai run away. She pretended not to know anything all day long. Until I couldn't find Xiaoguai when I got home at night and checked the video recordings, I found that it had entered Cora's room and never came out again. Under my repeated questioning, Cora cried and said sorry. I just accidentally didn't close the window. I didn't expect it would run away. I didn't have time to pay attention to Cora and immediately went out to look for the cat. Cyrus accompanied me to look for it all night. It wasn't until the next morning that we found its cold body on the road beside the villa area. After returning to the villa, I went crazy and scolded and beat Cora. She hid behind Cyrus, crying pitifully. Cyrus began to protect her. Later, he impatiently pushed me away. That's enough. The cat is already dead. It's useless no matter how much you scold and beat her. I looked at Cyrus in disbelief. I couldn't understand how he could say such cold words when he had raised Xiaoguai with me for 2 years. But he didn't blame Cora at all. It wasn't until now that I understood that he didn't even care about me, let alone a cat. I didn't dare to take the risk. So that afternoon, I sent Xiaoguai to Finn's house. Finn was the adopted son of my parents. He is now the person in charge of the Cheng family. When I showed up with 2 big bags of pet supplies, he looked worried. Did you two have a quarrel? Even if you quarreled, you shouldn't leave home. I sighed. We didn't quarrel, but I'm going to divorce. Did Cyrus hit you? Finn suddenly raised his voice, scaring Xiaoguai, who had just poked its head out, back into the pet carrier. No, brother. While soothing Xiaoguai, I told Finn the key points about Cora's matter. I was definitely going to get a divorce. It's just that there were many business interests between our two families, so getting a divorce wasn't an easy thing. Since being reborn, I had been preparing the procedures and documents for the divorce, trying my best to minimize the losses to the Chang family. I came to see Finn today also to let him be prepared in advance. After listening to me, Finn's face turned cold. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for the company. I'll cover for you. Get a divorce as soon as possible. Looking at Finn's cold and tough-side face, I had mixed feelings in my heart. Suddenly, I hugged his arm. Thank you, brother. Finn was stiff for a moment, and then he smiled and patted my head. No need to thank me. I leaned on Finn's shoulder and wiped away my tears when he couldn't see. In my previous life, after I was kidnapped, Cyrus refused to save me. Cora only has me and you still have Finn. He will save you. However, Finn had an unexpected car accident on his way to save me. I watched helplessly as his car plunged into the cliff, and his life or death was unknown. At that moment, the little will to survive that I had left was completely shattered. Even when the dagger pierced my chest, I didn't feel any pain. Since God gave me a chance to start over, I would never let the past repeat itself. I not only wanted to save myself, I also wanted to save Finn. 1 month later, Cora's painting won an award. She gave the painting to Cyrus. She also asked him to hang it in the study so that he could see her achievement every day. Cyrus's eyes were full of indulgence, and he readily agreed. A week later, when Cora was carrying the painting back, I was about to go out. When we passed each other on the stairs, she suddenly spoke. You've clearly seen that brother Cyrus doesn't like you anymore. Why don't you leave him? The Cora in front of me had a malicious look in her eyes. There was no trace of the innocent and lively look of a girl left. I didn't show much emotion and looked straight into her eyes. Since you like Cyrus, why don't you dare to confess your love? Are you afraid that others will call you a mistress? The one who isn't loved is the mistress. Cora rolled her eyes without restraint, and her provocative gaze swept over my lower abdomen. You can't even have children. Brother Cyrus won't stay with you forever. You'd better leave on your own initiative. Don't be so blind and annoying. My eyes darkened. It was true that I got a health problem when I prayed for a peace talisman for Cyrus in that winter. The doctor said that my body had caught a cold and needed good care, otherwise it would be difficult for me to conceive. Over the years, I had never stopped taking medicine for conditioning. But I still hadn't gotten pregnant. Cyrus had never complained to me about it. I didn't expect that he would mind it so much. And he even told Cora my privacy as a joke. I took a deep breath but couldn't suppress my anger anymore. So I simply raised my foot and kicked Cora's painting down the stairs. The wooden frame crashed onto the floor with a loud noise. The canvas got hooked on the railing and was torn with a long slit. Cora's eyes instantly turned red, and she raised her hand to fight with me. But she was half a head shorter than me and didn't keep the habit of working out like I did. I quickly pulled away from her and pushed her aside. Cora hit the wall. When she got up, her entire right arm was in an unnatural drooping position. My arm is broken. It hurts so much. My arm is broken. I watched coldly as Cora screamed and cried in pain while holding her arm. I didn't feel the slightest pity in my heart. I cursed "serves you right" and then left without looking back. On this day, Cyrus called me 18 times and sent dozens of WeChat messages. I ignored them all. It wasn't until I got home in the evening that I found Cyrus had sent the butler and servants away. In the huge living room, I stood alone on the opposite side of Cyrus and Cora. There was anger in his eyes, and his voice was low. Yuri, apologize to Cora. I sneered and asked him, apologize for what? Cyrus frowned and walked forward, pointing at Cora, who had already cried her eyes red on the sofa, and was extremely angry. You ruined her painting and pushed her down and hurt her arm. Shouldn't you apologize? I remained calm and composed. Do you believe everything she says? Have you watched the surveillance video? At the tense moment, Cora suddenly spoke. The surveillance video is broken. She looked at me smugly, as if she was certain that I would be forced by Cyrus to apologize to her. But she was wrong. I already knew that Cyrus had secretly damaged the surveillance video, so I was even more fearless. Facing Cora's confident gaze, I said slowly, Cora, after you found that there was no surveillance video, you pretended to be aggrieved, thinking that Cyrus would believe whatever you said, right? But let me guess, you didn't tell him why we had an argument, did you? Cora shivered. Just as she was about to defend herself, she heard Cyrus's impatient voice. Don't try to scare her. Apologize to her. I looked at Cyrus, whose face was cold, and narrowed my eyes slightly. Cyrus, why don't you ask about the whole story? You believe everything she says. It was she who provoked me first. You should ask her carefully. Cyrus raised his voice, looking incredulous. Yuri, are you trying to say that she deliberately provoked you, so she deserved to be hurt? Open your eyes and see. That was the painting she spent a whole month painting overnight. She wouldn't throw it away. She's a painter. How could she risk her future and dislocate her entire arm? It was you who hurt her. Is it so hard for you to apologize on your own initiative? I took a deep breath and stared at Cyrus, speaking word by word. Then, was it my fault that I almost lost my fertility after freezing for hours in the snow to save you? Cyrus's face turned pale. What did you say? I exhaled and pointed at Cora, who had a wronged expression on the sofa. Cyrus, she said that you don't love me anymore. She said that since I can't have children, it's shameless for me to stay by your side. But this is my privacy. If it weren't for you telling her, how could she know? Regret and uneasiness flashed in Cyrus's eyes. He didn't dare to look straight into my eyes. He just lowered his head and softened his voice. Yuri, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. After a long silence, Cyrus raised his head again. But one thing is one thing. I've apologized to you, and you should also apologize to Cora. After all, you hurt her more deeply and almost ruined her future. What Cyrus meant was that Cora just told the truth, but I almost made her unable to hold a paintbrush again. How ridiculous. He was my husband. But he didn't care about my situation at all and didn't care that rumors would hurt me. Cora had already filled his whole heart, making him betray and hurt me as a matter of course. Fortunately, I didn't love Cyrus anymore. I didn't feel any pain at all. Only disgust. Looking at his solemn accusation, I didn't hesitate to take out the documents and throw them on the table. Stop explaining, Cyrus. You might as well just say frankly that you don't love me anymore. Since you don't love me, there's no need for us to be tied together. Let's get a divorce. Looking at the cold words, divorce agreement, on the cover of the document, Cyrus's face changed. Yuri, if you have doubts, I can explain. But I didn't cheat. I won't agree to the divorce. I tilted my head slightly, looking at Cyrus, who was pretending to be calm while suppressing his anger, and suddenly smiled. Then asked Cora to move away and swear that you'll never see her again. Can you do that? What on earth are you making a fuss about? You know Leo is my best friend. How can I fail to fulfill his entrustment? Is it just because of Leo? Cyrus seemed to suddenly lose his energy. He avoided my gaze, wanted to explain, but didn't know how to start. This scene made me feel extremely ironic. Stop deceiving yourself, Cyrus. You've let a girl who has no blood relationship with you and no proper status live in your home. It's already hard to explain. This is modern society. You can't think of having two women at the same time. I don't want to be disgraced with you anymore. You have no choice. I must get a divorce. 12 that night, I left the divorce agreement and left. In the following week, Cyrus didn't send me any messages. Nor did he sign it. Instead, it was Cora who sent me photos every day. At first, it was a side view of Cyrus in a meeting. Then it was a dinner with only her and Cyrus. She was triumphant and overjoyed. Brother Cyrus is living well without you at home. You'd better never come back. I wasn't angry and replied to her, Mistress, please wake up. Cyrus and I haven't divorced yet. I'm still Mrs. Cyrus, and you're still the mistress who can't see the light of day. Cora didn't reply to me. That night, she sent me another photo. It was a photo of Cyrus with hickeys all over his chest on the master bedroom bed. You won't be Mrs. Cyrus for long. I didn't reply. I sent this photo together with the video I had saved before to Cyrus. That video was taken on the night when I went on vacation in Haicheng. Cyrus was drunk and kissed Cora deeply while pressing her against the sofa. He thought that by deleting the video after sobering up and destroying the surveillance device, he could completely cover up this matter. However, he didn't know that after being reborn, I had made a real-time backup of the home surveillance video. I knew clearly everything that Cyrus and Cora did at home. 13 It was only after receiving Yuri's email that Cyrus realized belatedly that things had gone beyond his control. He and Yuri had been married for 3 years. The love they had at the beginning was real. But every time he saw Yuri holding Xiaoguai and calling it baby, Cyrus would always feel a pang in his heart. He thought that Yuri was deliberately blaming him in this way. He even felt that he was a sinner. It was at this time that Cora appeared. There were many ways, but he stubbornly chose to bring her home. He deceived himself that he was just taking care of Cora as a brother on behalf of his friend. He knew Cora's little tricks. Lying, framing, and pretending to be weak. But whenever he thought of his friend's dying entrustment, he would feel more sorry for Cora and was willing to protect her more. Cyrus could see the pure admiration for him in Cora's eyes. He thought he was firm enough. But he still couldn't help falling. He turned off the home video out of fear, trying to calm his restless heart because of the affair in this way. However, after seeing Yuri's email, he realized his own stupidity. Yuri had already found out, but she endured it and didn't want to break up with him completely. If Cora hadn't deliberately provoked her, maybe Yuri wouldn't have exploded at all. This marriage could have continued. It was all Cora's fault. Cyrus regretted thinking that if only he had been more careful and restrained Cora a little more. But why, Yuri, who climbed the mountain in the snow to pray for his safety in the past, suddenly didn't love him just because of this small problem. It must be that Yuri had also changed her heart. So the divorce wasn't just his fault. 14 Cyrus asked me to meet him in the coffee shop not far from the Chang's building. When he saw me, he was a little nervous and quickly avoided my gaze. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything and waited for him to continue. After a long time, he raised his head and looked at me nervously. I'll ask Cora to move out of the house. She's Leo's only relative. I'll give her a sum of money so that she can live without worries for the rest of her life. I promise that I'll never contact her again. If I do this, can you forgive me? I suddenly understood that it was not surprising that Cyrus would like Cora. They both had the same strange way of thinking, and when they were stupid, they were simply unreasonable. I sighed and my eyes fell on the wedding ring on his left ring finger. Cyrus, do you still remember your wedding vows? Cyrus was stunned for a moment and then irritably tugged at his tie. Cyrus and I were in a free love relationship. At the wedding, he made a promise to stay together for a lifetime and never betray each other, but now he had broken that promise with his own hands. Cyrus, you can't tolerate any flaws. You wouldn't buy a rotten apple. If I had betrayed you first, you would have abandoned me long ago. Cyrus's breath hitched. Sign it as soon as possible. It's good for both of us. Otherwise, if Cora makes a fuss, I don't know what I'll do. You're a big CEO. You can easily disappear. Cora hasn't graduated yet. It's hard to say whether she can even get her diploma. After I finished speaking, I was about to leave. But Cyrus grabbed my wrist. He withdrew his gaze from the window and his tone was low and cold. Do you want a divorce because of Cora or because of him? Who? I subconsciously turned around and happened to see Finn pushing open the door of the coffee shop and walking towards me anxiously. It was so ironic. I tried hard to break free from his grip. I used all my strength to slap Cyrus. Cyrus, don't think that everyone is as disgusting as you. Then I turned around and was just embraced by Finn, who came late. He took a deep look at Cyrus. He protected me and quickly left under his hateful gaze. 2 days later, I received the divorce agreement signed by Cyrus. In the afternoon of that day, I took a professional moving team back to the villa where I had lived for 3 years and moved away all the things that belonged to me, from the expensive haute couture dresses and jewelry to the plastic fridge magnets bought at roadside stalls. I would rather take them back and throw them away than leave them to Cyrus and Cora. Later, the butler told me that when Cora went back home at night and saw the living room that looked like it had been robbed and the empty jewelry cabinet and wardrobe, she let out an earth-shattering scream. She felt wronged. She cried and sat on the sofa waiting for Cyrus to come back. However, I don't know if it was on purpose, but Cyrus went on a business trip temporarily and didn't come home for a whole week. Not long after the divorce, I moved into my new home in the South City with Xiao Guai. When I was lying in the rocking chair with Xiao Guai in my arms, basking in the sun, Finn came out of the kitchen wearing an apron. He served me a bowl of soup that had been simmering slowly for 3 hours. Just one taste made me feel extremely delicious. Looking at Finn's back as he helped me tidy up the bookshelf in the distance, I suddenly remembered what Cyrus had said in the coffee shop. I couldn't help but fall into thought. When my parents found Finn back then, he was just a baby in swaddling clothes. Since they couldn't find his relatives after reporting to the police for several months and didn't want to let him suffer in the welfare home, they adopted him and treated him as their own child ever since. There was a character Fan embroidered on his bib, so my parents named him Finn. In Finn's first year of high school, the Fan family in Haicheng came to look for him. They said that he was the youngest son of the Fan family in Haicheng. That winter, Finn refused to leave for Haicheng. He insisted on spending the spring festival with us at home before leaving. He was away for 6 years. The day he came back happened to be the engagement banquet between Cyrus and me. Looking at my brother, who I hadn't seen for years and seemed a bit strange, I wanted to hold his arm but didn't dare to approach him. My parents had planned to retire and travel around the world long ago. Unfortunately, I didn't like running the company, so they couldn't fulfill their wish. After knowing that Finn wouldn't leave, they completely became hands-off bosses and handed over the company and me to Finn to take care of. In the following years, I gradually regained the closeness with Finn that I had when I was a child. He was very kind to me. He spoiled me and indulged me and was even willing to sacrifice his life for me. I had never thought that Finn would have feelings for me other than those of a brother and sister. After all, he was the most favored youngest son of a century-old family. There was no need for him to endure the gossip and like me. However, Cyrus's words did make me feel troubled. I thought for a while and then pretended to be cheerful and said, "Brother, you're such a good cook. It would be a pity if there wasn't someone to appreciate your skills." Finn didn't raise his head, and his voice sounded tired. "Aren't you the one who just appreciated it? But I can't appreciate it every day. You're also half a year older than me. It's time for you to find a girlfriend." Halfway through the words, Finn gave me a cold glance. I immediately lowered my head, and my voice grew weaker and weaker. Looking at my cowardly appearance, Finn sighed. Right after ending a marriage, you're urging me to get married. Yuri, are you serious? I pursed my lips and defended in a low voice, I just hope you can be happy. I will be happy. From a long distance away, Finn looked straight at me. You don't have to test me. I have my own plans. I will be happy, but it's just not the right time yet. After saying that, he shifted his gaze and turned around to enter the kitchen. I blinked a few times and suddenly felt a mix of emotions. I quietly complained to Xiao Guai, he's so hard to understand. 16 in the second month after the divorce, I had already adapted to the independent life with just me and my cat. Finn would come to bring me food occasionally, but he maintained a frequency that wouldn't disturb or interfere with me. It was as if nothing had happened that afternoon. In contrast, Cyrus wasn't doing well. Since we were in the same social circle, even without deliberately asking around, I could still know a thing or two about his news. After coming back from a business trip, he gave Cora a sum of money and asked her to move out of the house. Cora refused and threw a huge tantrum at him. Surprisingly, Cyrus was unusually firm in his attitude. It was as if the person who used to have his heart and eyes full of Cora wasn't him. After Cora moved out of the villa, she was still unwilling to give up. She waited at the entrance of the villa and blocked Cyrus at his company. She even rushed into the meeting room despite being stopped, causing Cyrus to lose a very valuable big order. When I heard this news, I suddenly felt that Cora at this moment was just like me in my previous life. Because she didn't believe that Cyrus would change his heart, she turned herself into an angry bird and plunged headlong into a vortex. She ended up being smashed to pieces, and the loss outweighed the gain. Cyrus was equally ruthless towards Cora and didn't even give her a chance to meet him. Driven crazy, Cora vented all her resentment on me. Hearing the filthy insults on the phone, I closed my eyes. But Cora, did Cyrus ever say that he loved you? The cursing stopped abruptly. 2 seconds later, there was a beeping sound. I had watched the surveillance videos at home. When facing Cora, Cyrus never said anything inappropriate and never took the initiative to make a proper promise. He was like a confident operator, enjoying manipulating Cora's admiration for him. He was like this with Cora, and also with me. Otherwise, Cyrus wouldn't have blatantly brought Cora home, tested me time and time again, and pushed my bottom line. Cyrus was a complete scumbag. 17 Cyrus had tried to contact me recently. Through work or through friends. But I refused them all. Until this time, I received an invitation from Cyrus to a foundation's charity dinner. The foundation of Cyrus's family was organized by Cyrus in my name after he recovered from his illness back then. It was also the project that I had put the most effort into building after getting married. So I couldn't refuse. That night, he walked straight towards me through the crowd. When he got close, I realized that he looked haggard because of Cora's torment. Even the custom-made suit couldn't hide his exhaustion all over. He said, Yuri, I've already asked Cora to move out. Could you give me a chance to start over? I couldn't understand Cyrus's way of thinking and took a step back to keep a distance. Cyrus, I don't like you anymore. We're already divorced. It's meaningless to say these things. Cyrus didn't agree. He was about to say something when there was a quarrel outside the door. It was actually Cora. Because she didn't have an invitation letter, she fought with the guards who stopped her. Cyrus's face darkened instantly, and he rushed towards her. I don't know how he comforted Cora. 10 minutes later, Cyrus came back alone. He walked towards me again but was stopped halfway by the staff who told him that it was time for him to give a speech on stage. Cyrus asked me to wait for him. However, my eyelids kept twitching, and I didn't feel comfortable. I left the banquet hall before he finished his speech. Unexpectedly, I met Cora in the underground garage. Her hair was loose. The lace skirt had several footprints on it from the security guards just now. She looked like a pitiful rag doll. But it made me feel a chill in my heart. Yuri, I want you to die. As long as you die, Brother Cyrus will only love me. She took out a knife from behind and rushed towards me screaming. I started running. While running, I shouted for help, but at a corner, I stepped on my skirt, sprained my ankle, lost my balance, and fell on the stairs. The next second, Cora caught up. I screamed and curled myself up into a ball. There was no expected pain. A few drops of blood dripped on the ground beside my ear. I turned around and saw Cyrus standing in front of me, blocking me. The dagger had pierced through his back and stuck out from his chest. 18 In the emergency room, Cyrus had a very long dream. It was like being injected with the memories of himself in another parallel universe. In that world, Cyrus completely broke his original vow. He fell in love with Cora and betrayed Yuri. He clearly knew Cora's bad nature but indulged her blindly, making Yuri sad time and time again. When Yuri was kidnapped, he didn't hesitate to choose to save Cora. The reason was simple. Cora only had him, while Yuri had Finn to save her. However, he didn't expect that Finn would have a car accident on his way to save Yuri and fall off the cliff. The kidnappers were afraid that things would get out of hand and cause trouble, so they killed the hostage in advance. They left Yuri alone in the wilderness. After losing Yuri, Cyrus suddenly felt lost. He didn't seem to love Cora that much anymore. Especially after finding out that the kidnapping case was deliberately designed by Cora and that Finn's car had been tampered with by Cora. Cyrus thought Cora was disgusting. He seemed to have split personalities and became the Cyrus who only loved Yuri again. He collected evidence and sent Cora to prison. On the day Cora was taken away, she screamed and accused, "It's you who made me like this. It's you who betrayed Yuri. It's all your fault." Cyrus seemed to be suddenly awakened by a slap. He realized belatedly that he was the one who started it all. Yuri died because of his betrayal. Cyrus couldn't accept the reality. After staying awake for 2 nights, Cyrus swallowed a whole bottle of sleeping pills. Beep. His heartbeat stopped. Beep, beep, beep. His heartbeat resumed. 19 Cora was arrested on the day of the incident. Cyrus was injured in a vital part and was in a coma for a week before waking up. I went to the hospital to visit him the day after he woke up. Finn was with me. Cyrus frowned slightly when he saw Finn. But his tone was calm and polite. "Could you let me talk to Yuri alone?" Finn saw me nod and then turned around and went out. There were only Cyrus and I in the ward. He looked at me, and his gaze was both strange and familiar. After a long time, he managed to force a bitter smile. "I'm sorry, Yuri. I didn't mean not to choose you." I was suddenly stunned. Then I heard him say, "It must have been very painful when the dagger pierced through your heart." My face instantly turned pale, and I took 2 steps back towards the door. "You've also come back." Cyrus didn't say anything and just nodded while looking at me. I didn't ask why the Cyrus in the previous life had died. I didn't care either. In both the past life and this life, he deserved what he got and deserved to be punished. Perhaps sensing my rejection, Cyrus weakly covered his eyes. "I've always owed you a sincere apology, and also one to Finn." I was confused. "What do you mean?" Cyrus sighed and told me about how Cora had designed the kidnapping case and tampered with Finn's car. Perhaps he hadn't fully recovered yet. He was breathing rapidly and started coughing when he finished speaking. I, on the other hand, was standing in the distance, unable to stop my body from trembling. Seeing that I still refused to approach him, he pulled out the oxygen tube, rolled off the bed, and then staggered towards me on his knees, begging. "I know you won't forgive me. But Yuri, I still want to ask, if I hadn't brought Cora home, would we have ended up like this?" He was still shirking responsibility and pushing all the consequences onto Cora. I felt like there was a heavy weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I forced myself to stay calm and pushed his hand away. "There's no if." Then I ignored Cyrus, who was lying on the ground and couldn't get up, and immediately pushed the door and left. I found Finn at the end of the corridor. He had just finished making a phone call and was walking towards me. "Brother." I quickened my pace and threw myself into his arms. Finally, I couldn't hold it back and burst into tears for the first time since being reborn. 20 That was the last time I saw Cyrus. I heard that his health had been poor since he was discharged from the hospital. He was also in low spirits and developed the problem of alcoholism. In just half a year, he was hospitalized 3 times. The company's performance declined, and he began to be impeached by the board of directors. But these things had nothing to do with me anymore. Finn picked up a little calico cat downstairs at the company. He was afraid that he couldn't take good care of the little kitten, so he brought it to me to raise together. He would come to check on it from time to time, bring toys and cat food. By the way, he would also bring my favorite snacks and cook something special for me. He always took good care of me just right. He didn't force me to give an answer and didn't take that step either. Some things need to be left to time. We don't need to rush. The end.